something, maybe it'll never come back to us. So this feeling that is somehow emphasized even by the society, that you either do it now or you're never going to get to do it. It may be true for some things, right? But it may not be necessarily true for literally 80 to 85% of the things. And yet we begin to feel this way and we begin to blame ourselves as if, oh my God, I should have done this at this time, otherwise I will never be able to do it. So this looking at life, looking at time, looking at development, looking at um, education as something linear
Berkah.
is what leads to this feeling that sometimes we have missed opportunities. So that is one of the reasons for regret is we feel that we've lost an opportunity which will never come back to us. It may not come back in the same way, but it may come back in a different way. And then are we able to recognize it? Right? The fear of failure. Sometimes we believe that, that one of the reasons for regret is you fear that if you don't do something, you're going to fail. And that is very, very big, right, in us. Sometimes inaction that makes us regret. We feel that, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Many a times in my practice as a psychologist, when I ask my clients, okay, what would you like to change from the past, or what do you wish you had done differently? They always talk about, how maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago they did something and they wish that they had not done it, right? Or they wish that they had done it differently. So me at 45, sometimes I begin to think, oh, I wish I had done something differently at 25, right? But how? Right? At 25, we have only that knowledge, we have only that understanding, and we have only that bit of environment to make the choices. So we begin to blame our younger selves for not taking action, not realizing that we didn't have the
बोलो.
capacity then to take that action. So inaction leads us to regret, poor decision making, lack of courage. Sometimes we feel, oh, only if I had been bolder, only if I had been stronger, you know, I would have made a different decision. So only if is this, is a phrase of regret. Neglecting relationships, that sometimes happens maybe when we are older. We feel that, oh, I have a good life, I have made a career, maybe I've built a good business, but I have, not lived a very balanced life by neglecting relationships, right? So then we begin to regret and we feel that, oh, I wish I had spent more time here, I wish I had spent more time with this person or that person. So when we do not lead a balanced life, and we recognize that when we grow old, then it brings about a sense of regret. Like I said, prioritizing the wrong things, which is exactly what I meant by, not leading a balanced life. Ignoring intuition sometimes, right? Sometimes I'm sure if all of you, sit down and think about it a little bit, you will have a moment where you had a gut feeling, right? We call it a gut feeling to do something or a gut feeling to pursue something. And then we let it go because we're not very sure about it, right? And then years later, when things are not going our way or when things are not in place or not positive for us, we think that we should have listen to our gut intuition. We should have listened to this. We don't know what that path would be. Even if you had listened to your intuition, we don't know where it would have taken you. Because things are not fine now, because things are unstable now, we begin to think about it as, oh, but I should have, right? Of course, this age old, sorry, comparison with others, which we often do. And we are saying, oh, but this is there. If only I had that. If only I had this. If only I had a different set of parents. If only I had a different spouse. Or if only I was going to a different school. Right? There is no end to comparisons, and we begin to feel that if we had a different setup, a different kind of environment, maybe we would be somewhere else. All this is a game of the mind. That's what I call it, you know. And of course, the unfulfilled potential that we experience when you have a dream that you've not been able to achieve, or you have a career that you've not been able to pursue, or like today, this morning, I was speaking to actually a woman, a lady client who was telling me that she was a gold medal in her college. She had done her honors and she had won a gold medal. And she had this vision that every day she would get up, go to work, have a career, have an office, have a staff. So she was very, very business oriented. And then now she says 5 years down the line, she's actually getting up, organizing meals, packing her children's lunch box, packing her husband's box, his box, whatever, taking care of the house, ensuring the maids are on time, going. So she's now saying, from my dream was to manage an office, and what I'm doing is actually managing a house. Right. And that filled her with a lot of regret. So in the session, we worked through it. We were trying to understand how we can begin to appreciate the life that we are living, right? And not think about or not regret over the life that is lost. So that was a different process. And a part of that process I will be talking about in the session also. But I'm saying it's a very real feeling, where you feel like you were made for something else, you were built for something else, you spent your life, honing certain skills, and you feel that those skills are not being used here. So I'd like to share a story here. This is a story of Howard Schultz and Starbucks. He was the CEO of Starbucks. Starbucks. I'm just going to use his first name, Howard. Now, Starbucks was a very small coffee shop in the 2000s, right? And it was just growing at a very, very normal rate, like a small shop where, people met for coffee and things like that. Now, when Howard took over the leadership role as a CEO in the early 2000s, he began to push for aggressive expansion. He said, no, we need to expand. We need to go to every corner of the world. We need to really, get this going. We can't just be a small coffee shop at one corner. Now, to do that, of course, they didn't have the time to train people, right? So what they did, they made it automated. They said, we're just making coffee and machines can make the coffee. Let's just have one person in the outlet who is doing everything. So reduced manpower, made it more automated. And so what happened? He didn't realize that it became less personal. So what was a coffee shop where people could go in and say, hi, hello, meet the staff and all of that. Now it became like just a machine, right? With one staff to run everything. Now the focus on quantity and was more than the focus on quality, and that led to decline in the sales. Slowly, Starbucks started getting affected. Now, the company had to close hundreds of stores, lay off thousands of employees they couldn't afford, and Howard had to step down from the role of leadership. So, this is the story of Starbucks, which is a huge coffee chain. And just Howard is known to have said in his interviews later on that he regrets certain decisions that he made. Now, did he change those decisions? Did Starbucks come back? Do the Starbucks that we see now, how did it become that? Right? Well, I will tell you a little bit more about how he worked around his regret and came back to stepping into leadership towards the end of the presentation. But such a big coffee chain also went through something like this, and Howard had the courage to acknowledge and say that, okay, I think I messed up and I think I have made these wrong decisions, and he stepped down. Now, did he remain stepping down or did he do something else? I will take you to that at the end of the presentation. So let's try and understand regret. Like, what's happening in the mind when we talk about regret? Like, it's an emotion in our body, right? And emotions are all driven by neurotransmitters. Like, there's dopamine, there is serotonin, and the fluctuations in these create emotional feelings, create emotions. So, trying to understand it, trying to understand the science behind regret and what happens in the brain regions, right? So, what happens? We have the frontal cortex. Now, just imagine that is something in the front of your brain, right? And we realize that an alternative decision could have led to a better outcome. And then this is activated, right? And it's like begins to doubt. This is the center of decision making, your prefrontal cortex or your orbitofrontal cortex, right? It makes decisions, it receives information and makes decisions. Now, when things are shaky, when things are negative, when things are not going your way, it begins to doubt all the decisions made, not just one, all the decisions you've made, right? It begins to make you feel like, oh my God, is it this? There's self-doubt that comes in. Is this right? Is that right? Is this right? Right? And then it takes you down a spiral. It makes you feel like, oh my God, maybe I have never made a right decision. Oh, wish I had made it then. Wish. So this part of your brain, which is very, it's almost like a filter, right? Like it takes in information, processes information, gives the information. But when you begin to experience regret, it suffers, right? It becomes weak, it becomes vulnerable. It is filled with self-doubt. And when that happens, there is a small part in the back of our neck, which is called the amygdala. You must have heard about it in mental health a lot of times. This goes through flight, freeze, and fight mode. So the amygdala is almost like, you can say, it's the siren of an ambulance, right? When there is danger, it will open up. So that's the siren. So this is the siren of our brain. So it helps to process negative emotions. And the moment you start feeling something negative, the amygdala gives you a signal. And it's like, something's going wrong. You're not feeling fine. You're not doing well. You're feeling something negative. There is a threat, right? And what happens is then the back of the brain, it goes to the back of the brain and it's like, oh my God, now I have made a mistake. There is an understanding that comes in, which adds to the regret. And it's like, okay, I'm feeling negative. The amygdala is telling me it's a dangerous situation. You're feeling like there's a threat. You should have the life you're living is not the life you should live. You should have done something else, and your life would have been something different. It gives you all parallel universes and all of that. And then the back of the brain, which is responsible, right, for comprehension, which understands everything, is like, okay, this life is wasted. What have I done? I should have done better, right? It gives you all those kind of conclusions. So this is what happens in our brain when we begin to feed it with an emotion of regret, when we begin to doubt our decisions, when we begin to instill with self-doubt and wallow in it. I'm not saying we should not doubt our decisions, right? There is, but there is a different way. There's a more cognitive way to approach it. So what happens cognitively, right? So we begin to think about negative outcomes and regret. The brain's reward system, including the dopamine levels, go down, right? Which is our happiness, or which is our energy, an energy neurotransmitter. When dopamines are high, we feel more energetic. That starts to go down, right? We start feeling less and less energetic. And that makes us wallow in regret all the more. Sometimes because we regret something we've done in the past, and then there is this dopamine level going down, we may further engage in making certain mistakes, right? We may not come back to the path of correction. There is also a counterfactual thinking, which involves imagining, like I said, creating alternative universe and saying, oh, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. So those are all coping mechanisms, where your brain is engaging in counterfactual thinking, saying, trying to cope with the regret that you're feeling and saying, oh, maybe you should do this and maybe you should have done that and this. So in the process, what happens in going back to the past and saying this, there is a possibility that even the present gets affected, right? Because our front cognition has become very vulnerable. So, in regretting that I should have done this, I should have done that, maybe what you need to do now is also something which we are not doing. And then we are adding to that bag of regret, because 5 years down the line, you'll be thinking about this point, right? And you'll be saying, oh, 5 years ago, I should have done this and done that, right? So then that will become our narrative. It will become our script where we are constantly only saying what I should have done, what I could have done, or what I wish my life was. And it just removes us from the present. Obviously, we know what we're talking about, right? That when the amygdala is activated, when the cognition is challenged, there is obviously a low energy which could have an effect on the mental health. So many a times when my clients, when they say, I'm feeling very sad, I'm feeling very low, I don't know what is the reason, I don't know why, this, that, the narration is about feeling, feeling not um, happy in life. I check with them and I ask them, like, is there something you would like to change from your past? Is there something that happened that you're not comfortable? Is there any unprocessed feeling for you from the past? And many a times, in conversation, we realize, yes, right, there is something which either has not been emotionally processed, so there is regret for that, or there is something which the client feels that they should have cognitively done, but they have not done, so there is regret for that. So this emotion is a very intense emotion because it brings about, like I would say, a lot of other feelings. It's not just one feeling. It's a very, very complex emotion. It could bring about guilt, because of a wrong decision, someone else is affected, you are affected, so there could be guilt around it. A sense of shame, like I said, because people say, oh, don't feel regret and all of that. So a sense of embarrassment or humiliation, because your actions, you were expected to do something and you didn't do it. So all these feelings that I'm calling out now are all part of regret. Like if you look at regret as a big pizza, these are all like the small parts of it, small pies that are possibly there. A sense of disappointment that becomes so intense that it becomes a regret. Loss, where you're grieving the loss of opportunities, relationships that you feel that time cannot bring back to you. Sometimes frustration or feeling irritated or upset because you're not able to change something or you're not able to rectify it. So that gives a sense of regret. Anger is another feeling, which is, a very huge part of regret. Um, Fear about future. So this whole I wish, I wish, I wish, you know, um, and ensuring it comes from a fear of I have done this mistake in the past. I don't want to repeat it again. What if I repeat it again? Will I be? So the self-doubt, right? It gives us sense of fear and helplessness. It obviously gives us insecurity because we start doubting your own judgments, second guessing decisions, and then regretting them. Like I said, the moment we fall into this well of regret, the present can also go into it, right? And then this present becomes the past in some time, and then the path of regret continues. It sometimes leads to anxiety because there's a persistent worry about how mistakes might affect the future and leading to feelings of regret. So these feelings often intertwine, and regret is a very powerful and sometimes very overwhelming emotion. And that's why it's very, very important to talk about it. It's very important to first, like I will be sharing an exercise probably which would help you really break down, not just in this session, but also as an exercise later, is to really say, okay, what is the regret? And then, what can one do about it? Sometimes we may not be able to, and that acceptance is also very, very important, right? It's not like we can change everything. Every regret can be turned over. There's a U-turn. No. And that acceptance is also very, very important. What are some psychosomatic indicators of regret? And I find this with my clients also. They come in saying, I'm not able to sleep, or I'm not able to, I don't have a good lifestyle, or they're suffering from some kind of physical ailment where the reports look absolutely fine. They've been to doctors on and off, they've taken all the tests possible, and yet they're not able to understand why they feel so much pain or so much heaviness or difficulty in breathing. And many a times it's just a psychosomatic indicator of an emotion which they have not processed. So these are some possible psychosomatic indicators of regret. So I'd like to share some questions here for reflection. And as you see the slides and as you hear me, you can choose any one question that you would like to work on, right? You don't have to share it. This will be your personal work, but I'm just hoping that this personal work will give you some insight into your pattern and how you deal with regret. I'd like to clarify that this exercise is not to give you a solution, right? But is to tell you that to recognize this feeling of regret, to work with it, and maybe to let it go or accept it. So, as I share these questions, just look at the questions on the slide. There are two slides. This is the first one. And just choose whichever question you want to work with personally. And if you have a pen and paper, please write down that question on the paper there. So some of the questions: is there a decision I have made in the past that I frequently revisit in my mind, wishing I had chosen differently? Right? You can choose that question. Don't worry about what you're going to do with it. If you feel that question calls out to you, just write it down. Do I feel a sense of guilt or shame about something I've done or not done in the past? If you feel you'd like to address that question, take it on. Do I avoid certain situations or people because they remind me of a past regret? And are my current actions or decisions influenced by a desire to correct or make up for a past mistake? So that's a first slide, and you're welcome to write down any question that you feel. And I know many people say, show me the second slide also. So here you go, you know, with the second slide of, I think there are only two, or there are three, I'm sorry. So very quickly, there are four questions here. You can choose any one. That you feel you want to work with. And this is the third slide. And don't worry if a question didn't call out to you, don't choose it. It's fine. You can still do the activity, you can still do the exercise. So if you feel you didn't understand the question or you feel like it didn't relate too much to you, that's okay. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions here, and you can choose any one that you feel you'd like to work with. Okay. I am just moving to the exercise, right? Now let's see if we are able to use cognitive behavior therapy, which is, using the prefrontal cortex again and trying to work through this emotion of regret. So I told you to choose one question, one situation, something that you wanted to change, whatever that is. So that's your first there. Now, I'd like you to think about in that particular situation, like recall that situation, go back to that question. What was happening? What was the event? Right? What happened? As you recall that, I'd like you to really think about what was in your control in that situation. In that given situation, what was in your control? And just write it down. It can be one thing, two things, it can be nothing, right? So you could maybe say, 1, 2, 3 things which were in my control. Let's take a minute for that, just for you to recall, go back to that situation that you wanted to work on, recall what all was happening. And then my question is, what was in your control? Okay. Now you have a very real picture, right? Now, whatever was there in your control, maybe one thing, two thing, maybe nothing, right? Now you realistically understand what was in your control, and then ask yourself, as you see on the slide, right, like the arrow, did you do your best? Given the situation, given your age, given the knowledge, given what you had in your control, did you do your best? And you may either say, yes, I did my best, or no, I did not do my best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you either say you did your best or you say no, yes or no. These are the two choices. Now, whatever it is, the first thing to do is feeling that shame and guilt is not helpful, because you know now what was in your control. You know that you did your best given the situation. So there is no point of feeling shame and guilt, towards something that happened so many years ago or so many months ago. And it's not helpful, right? What are you going to do with that shame and guilt? Is it going to help you move forward? No. It's just going to make you sit in one place and wallow. You can talk about it, right? That's where therapy comes in. You talk about the shame, you talk about the guilt. Don't put it under the carpet, right? But after having done that, you know, what comes in is appreciation for what you did, whatever you did, right? Even if you made one choice, right, in that situation, like whatever is there in your control, right? Even if you did a fraction of it, say, okay, I knew this much. I didn't have too much in my control. And so I appreciate myself for what I did given the circumstances. And secondly, remember the learning. So that is what helps us move forward, saying, these are things I will not do again. These are things I will remember. These are situations I will avoid, right? Whatever the learning is. Yeah. So this is like a tool of CBT that we can use in every situation whenever we feel this strong emotion of regret coming up. We can really break it down into these reflective questions and say, can I work through this? Right? And I'm always saying, when you come to that stage of shame and guilt, don't hurry there. Talk about it. Talk to professionals, talk to safe spaces, talk to forums, what you're feeling, but with an intention that you have to move forward. And after having done that, I'd like to share the remaining part of the story, wherein what Howard did. He admitted, first of all, that the rapid expansion was not something that should have happened, that it was a mistake. He expressed deep regret over prioritizing growth at the expense of the brand's core values. This is the story of Starbucks that I was talking about. So he stopped at that stage, where I said shame and guilt. You remember this? Let me go back. This place where one experiences shame and guilt, he experienced it. He expressed it. He said, yes, I am feeling this. I should not have done this. Took ownership and said, I am going to step back into leadership and rectify this, right? I'm going to do what I can to rectify it however I can. He didn't imagine that it would become such a big store today, right? Or that it would be so, as what the brand that it is today. But he said, let me step back and see what I can do about it. And that is what it is, the learnings. That is what is important, right? So he started training staff. He said, let's close till we are completely trained. Let's bring people back because this is a people oriented company, and began to focus on the mission of the company was to spread happiness, was to spread joy, right? And he said, my biggest learning is that I should not expand rapidly, right? And not at the cost of human emotions. So he learned his lesson and he said, this is how I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to try, right, to get over it and not stay in it. And we know today how Starbucks has become what it has, but that is irrelevant here. What is relevant is the human effort that went in changing course of action where possible. If it was not possible, right, it's like I said, there are some situations where it's not possible. Then it's also an acceptance that I tried my best. I didn't know better, right? And what do I learn from that? So, what are some techniques to let go or to deal with it or to actually sit with it? First of all, journaling, where we sit with this emotion. Like I gave you the exercise and you say, okay, what was in my control? Did I do my best? So follow the steps, journal around it, you know, each and every situation. Don't just live in that situation. Write it down. What is the situation? What are you feeling? Then expressing gratitude, appreciation for whatever you did in the given moment. And of course, the rational talk, where you come to the space of shame or guilt, then you ensure that you are engaging in REBT, which is rational emotional behavior therapy, where you talk about this intense emotion, why you're feeling the shame, why you're feeling the guilt, and mindfulness, which is here on. Here on, what can I take care of? Here on, what can I watch out for? You know, here on, how do I make a change? Let me not sacrifice my present for something that happened in the past. So, some suggestions is living in the present, absolutely mindfully taking control of things, setting intentions. What is it that you want for yourself now? Taking responsibility, like Howard did, and say, okay, what can I do about it now? Right? Pursuing your passions, whatever you feel you left behind, try and pursue it in whatever way you can. Right? I'd like to, say that maybe you may not be able to pursue it exactly like how you would at 24, right? But in whatever way you feel you can pursue something, pursue it that way, right? Maybe you wanted to study higher. You may not, I don't know if you can go back to college and study full time and all of that, but don't stop the learning process. Learn something, read something, get some certifications, whatever it is, and that will help you at least at least let go of regret to a very great extent that you did nothing. You did whatever was in your control. Building resilience, which is saying tough times do not last, tough people do. So times will be up and down. We cannot control it. Good things, bad things, all that will happen. That is what is life, with full of ups and downs, right? It is never going to be a fairy tale, right? But how do we ensure that we're living this life with its ups and downs, falling, getting up, going up again, flying, and all of that. So here are some things, and this is something which we would like to do today, is a call for action, right? So I'd like to say you may have thought of, maybe something you wanted to do, maybe something you wanted to pursue, maybe something you regret not doing, whatever that is, right? I'd like you to think about that and really ask yourself today, is there some way I can still pursue it? Right? Like, for example, you may have wanted to learn something, right? And you never got the opportunity to learn it. But can you learn it in some way even today? Maybe you wanted to build a relationship and you never got to build a relationship with that particular person, right? But can you today still build a relationship with someone who's around you, right? And not regret losing a relationship with just one particular person, right? So this is a call to action in this session. What I'm going to ask you, what was it that you wished, that you wanted to change, that you wish you had done, that you wish you had created space for? And how is it? How can you do it even today? Right? I'm saying this because we think, like I said in the beginning of the session, we think of life as linear, right? Life or time as linear. And we feel that, oh, I should have done it at 20. Now I can't do it at 40. Not true. You cannot do it the same way, right? Because of different reasons. But you may be able to do it in some way and sometimes in a better way. So I'm just going to say, think about it. Write down, what is it that I wish I could have done? How can I still do it in some way? Take a minute to think about that and write it down somewhere. That's your call to action in this session so that you have something to work on and so that you have something less to regret not having done or not having changed. Don't take the most difficult one, Make life simple. Take something simple that you regret and try and first start there, work around it, and slowly then get to the more difficult ones. You would like me to put the question? 1 minute. I think somebody has done it for me. Yeah, thank you. What is some decision that you regret? And oh no, that's not the question. Okay, so my question is take a simple one. Please don't go into the most difficult thing right of now. Right now, what is something you regret not doing or not pursuing? That's my first question. And how can you know, make space for it in your life today? So these are my two questions: to stop regretting and start living. And you're welcome to share if you feel in the chat box. Um, what is your call to action? What is it that you'd like to make space for? So you could just maybe mention, I'd like to make space for whatever, if you feel comfortable. Someone wanted the question slide. So as you're working on it, I'll just go back to the question slides. Sorry, I didn't see it before. There are 3 slides. So this is the third one. If you are taking a look at it, I will leave it for a few seconds. This is the second one. And this is the first one. And don't worry if you've missed some slides, you can always go back to the recording. That'll be shared with you. Someone's requested for a slide of techniques. I'll go to that once I finish sharing this. But like I'm saying, you can always watch the recording. So I think, is this the one? Someone who asked for the technique. Which one? Sorry. Yeah, this one.
Ma'am, since everybody is writing or they want to share something, I want to ask one common question which we generally get. We are working with people who are having mental illnesses or their caregiver. There are certain times because of their illness, the time is wasted. Because the wasted means it is used for the treatment, or maybe you get late for the treatment, and sometimes these things are regretted, and certain things cannot be cannot be done. Like you said, few things you can catch up, few things you cannot. But
Yes.
how to make peace with that? This is a
Yeah.
general question. That's all
Yeah.
I.
No, I think that's a wonderful question, Manjri. And I think when we start looking at what we can change,
Hmm.
right, at least that the bag of resentment will reduce, right? And that will help us accept that, okay, there are some things I cannot change. So let's begin with the space where change is possible, where something can be done about it, right? And when you do it, you will feel that confidence, you will feel the self-doubt go, you will feel the regret reduce, right? And that will help you accept that, okay, some things I did not get in life, right? Or in a particular situation. So that's how we work on it, by uh, beginning from spaces where there is control. That's why I asked you, right? And then what was in your control? So always, think about that. We'll feel less helpless as the bag reduces.
Mhm. Thank you, ma'am. uh,
I have a question there. So should I just read the question, Manjari, or are
yes.
you?
No, ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question how to deal or process self-doubt after decisions are taken. So that's why REBT, the rational, helps. So somewhere to really, break it down. When emotionally you're not able to understand whether this is the right decision, go in for cognitive, right? Wherein you say, what are the pros and cons of this decision? What are the pros and cons of the second decision? What are the pros and cons if I take a third choice? And then see which weighs out better, right? So I would always say we have two wheels, the cognitive, which is the functional, and the emotional, right? If the emotional is feeling a little weak, use the cognitive to support you. If the cognitive is feeling very weak, then use the emotional to support it, right? So at any one time, try and see, okay, if I'm not feeling so good, I'm not understanding this, try and use the other one. So in that way, when your decision making is feeling a little emotionally affected by self-doubts, use the cognitive tools, of decision making to arrive at a decision. Break it down. There's another question: how to do these things, create a space to reflect and maintain a hopeful outlook. So that's why journaling, that gives you a space to reflect, right? What you're feeling. But first, it may not make sense. You may get tired of writing, all
Mhm.
that will happen. So, however, that is a good way to reflect and to maintain a hopeful outlook. It will only come when you start making small changes that make you feel hopeful, right? Like we say, we work towards hope, we work towards happiness, right? They don't just come to us. So, what are you doing to maintain a hopeful outlook? How are you feeling less helpless? By making small decisions. Sometimes we feel, oh, I wish I could make that one big decision and life will be totally different. No, that's not possible, right? On an everyday basis, we have to make small decisions that help us feel validated. Oh, I lived a good day. Oh, I did well, right? And then maybe you take yourself closer to a bigger decision. So that gives you hope. Feeling less helpless gives us hope. How do we feel less helpless? Make small changes, make small choices. How to stop overthinking? A very difficult question to answer in such a short span of time. What I would say is we need to think about what is causing the overthinking, which is basically some kind of fear, some kind of anxiety that is there, and to get to the root of it, because it is not natural, right? Something in the environment is creating so much stress that, or has created from the past, I don't know, that has given you this pattern of overthinking. So really take the time out to address it, because it then just increases the levels of cortisol. Like I talk very neuropsychologically, so I'm really telling you that it will increase your stress hormones, which is the cortisol levels, and it will lead to a lot of disorders unnecessarily. So one CBT tool that I have shared, there's a question on CBT, is what I just shared with you in the session. You could just use that. That's really more than enough to work through any emotions. The moment you start thinking about your circle of control, right? And say, okay, what is in my control today, right? Maybe sleeping on time is in my control, eating right is in my control. And those are great things to do. Let me just focus on that, right? And then see how more things come within my control just because I'm sleeping well and eating well, right?
Mm.
And exercising well.
Himaji, I have a question.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Is someone who's yes, Ganesh, is someone who shared that they are in San Francisco and that they are really looking at it as an opportunity to work on their mental health. I'm so glad. Great. Yes, Ganeshji.
Yeah, I was just wondering how does retribution fit into letting go, and basically is that something which one can carry out as a way to alleviate the pain or the weight which one feels? Is it something which I know there's not something common which we can do, but is there some way in which it helps, or if it doesn't, I mean, is retribution a tool at all?
How do you see it, Ganeshji? Have you used it?
Well, you see, in my case, some of the things which I felt was I could have managed my money better. For example, I'm just saying that.
Hmm?
Uh, uh, so I could have tightened my belt. I could have reduced my expenses, etc., etc., etc. And my only retribution is that I have learned, and I have learned to build on a basic foundation of finance. That's what I have done. But I really don't know.
Exactly. No, but Ganeshji, that's what you're saying. You have put two, three things together in one word, which is basically you have said there's an acceptance, right? And there's a learning,
Correct.
right? And that's exactly what CBT also talks about, right? Like accept what you can't, what you can, and what you can't is becomes your learning.
And to add to that, I think you also said one more thing, Hemaji, that is don't compare. I think
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I think that's a very important factor, in letting go. Um, yeah.
Ma'am, there is
thank
one
you. Thank
question, which is how does one make peace with something that you have done that you now regret? Something you said when you were a bit angry or upset. Maybe everyone else has forgotten about it, but it has stayed in my mind. I have written this out and shared it with others too. Still, I wish I had not spoken so harshly then. I'm not sure if I contributed to an irreversible condition.
Yeah, this is exactly the feeling of shame that I'm talking about, right? Maybe it was not such a big thing, right? Maybe you were going through so much that there was some anger, it came out, and then, what can you do about it today? Like you said, maybe you've written to some people, maybe you've apologized to few people, and that's what life is, right? It is not nothing. If people are close to you, if it is your friends, if they really are your, well-wishers, they will let it go. How many times you must have let it go, right? Like if sometimes we look for is someone to say, hey, I'm so sorry, I was not in the right mind, I said something, I should not have done that, right? Many a times we wait for that apology to come and it doesn't come our way. So if you've gone ahead, if you've understood, and if you've apologized, then that's your learning. That you have reversed the condition.
Ma'am, may I say something?
Yes, Sakina.
Yeah, but sometimes it happens that even after apologizing, the person is not ready to let go, and they say that the way you've spoken, it cannot, it's like they say, no, words hit harder than a
Yeah,
sword, and that
yeah.
cannot change, and that person is now, and that stays lifelong because I have experienced something like that personally in my life, where I said something to someone, and that person completely stopped talking to me.
Mm.
It's because of those
That's
words. And I apologize not once, twice, but numerous times.
Mhm. You've
So
done
then
your best, Sakina. Mm.
then you feel that regret. Why did I say this? I should have thought before speaking. But you have apologized and still it has not reversed. Then
Give
how do
them
you deal?
time.
It's
Give
a
them
regret.
time. Maybe they need to work around something for themselves, right? Maybe they need to work around something that hit them, right? So our relationships are always two ways, right? You said something, they were hurt, you apologize. It's not necessary that they will come back in the same time frame. Give them time, let the understanding set in. Maybe they will understand it at some point of time, right? But you don't
But
have to hold yourself. Yeah,
no, the
yeah.
relationship is permanently broken. It's been many years.
Uh, yeah,
And then
yeah, it is. It is. It is. And someone said, right, like I use serenity prayer sometimes. There's a suggestion there. Yes, sometimes just send them good wishes, just send them wellness, and it is the relationship is not broken from your end, right? It's broken from their end. So just give it time to heal. Maybe it will, maybe it will not. But you've done your best. And your learning is, Sakina, all that you said before, right? Like words are very important. So maybe that is your learning.
okay, thank you. And how to let go of this particular regret. Again, the same tools of how you can change
Yes.
further, and what you did was what was in your control. But again, if you
Yes.
analyze deeply with CBT, you will say that talking something or saying something was under your control, which you didn't. So then that
Not
further.
necessarily. Not necessarily, right? It's not like we are human beings, right? We are not always in control. So maybe in that moment something was happening for you, some fear that kicked in, or some threat that you were feeling, or so many things could have been happening. So that was not in your control. So it's not like an excuse, but all I'm saying is sometimes to be aware for yourself, right? Okay, and not to repeat it again, right?
My last question, this
Yes, Sakina.
exercise that you gave of those 3 questions and then figuring out what was in your control, what if you go in a very introspection mode and you kind of start questioning like how a interrogation happens? Is it
I
that
think
if
that's
you
why if you feel you're not able to do it on your own, you can take the help of mental health professionals. Talk about this feeling that you're holding so intensely. Like I said, many of my clients who come to me, we actually work on regret, right? That is a very intense emotion that we work on. It is not necessary for you to do it alone and to figure it out. So please ensure that you have a safe space where you're brainstorming this, you're using the exercise and talking about it.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, sir, there's somebody who said that you wish that the other person has forgotten that you were harsh, but it still hurts you. Yes, I mean, and looks like it's your son, so you've mentioned there. So I think that's a little bit hurtful in a parent-child relationship because you feel that you should not have done that. So the guilt, the parent's guilt that you have is probably not is not yet over, right? But this is your learning. Maybe you can still be more patient with him, still exhibit your support for him, and whatever that is you can do in that relationship just to, you know, let him know or let yourself know that you're actually a good father. I'd just like to share a few things before we close, and questions are welcome, but um, remember your call to action. And these are some books which I suggest. Um, which can help in reading, understanding more. Um, Someone had asked me about overthinking. Maybe this book by Dale can help. That's very sweet. Someone says that I wish I knew this technique 25 years ago. You know it now, and you have n number of years ahead. So all the best to you. And a few more books. Some about the make time is just about living in the present, setting your intentions for the present. And this 27 Thoughts on Having No Regrets in Life is a very small book with just 27 quotes or 27 paragraphs. Very beautiful book. Simple read. So these are some options. You can go back to looking at the books when you get the video. This is your contact for support. These are my contact. You feel like you would like to reach out, you're more than welcome to reach out to me over my mail. This is my LinkedIn profile. Okay, so that brings us to the end. If there's anyone who'd like to share some experiences, anything that you'd like to mention, please do. Yes, so there is Mrinal who says that some actions of ours leads to things which are irreparable. Yes, we are human beings. We are capable of mistakes. We do all of this, you know. And to even begin to understand that yes, that's who I am. Like I make mistakes. I'm not holier than thou. That is also part of the whole learning process.
Ma'am, what I feel, we are even if somebody makes mistake, we sometimes, forgive them, but we are not never ready to forgive ourselves. We think that I
Absolutely.
should be very ideal, I should be perfect in everything, and that causes so many regrets.
I think well said, Manjari. I think we are the harshest on ourselves.
Right.
So it's 8, and it was wonderful listening to you. Some of my takeaways was to accept wherever you are and how you are. Accept what is dealt out, but how you deal with it is in your control. And of course, don't compare. You're a unique person, and if you grant that, you can see that others are unique too. So you don't have to compare.
Yeah.
And the last one is the learn and build part of it. Just keep learning. It's a process of learning and building on whatever foundations you have set in the past, and not making making stepping stones out of obstacles, so to speak, which is something which is a good takeaway, which I have learned from this. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your very insightful tips on how to manage regret. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for the wonderful participation and interaction. I learned so much, but with your questions and your reflections on life. So thank you for sharing that.
All right, then. Thank you. See you at next expert lecture next month, first Wednesday of next month. Thank you so much, everyone. All the best. Wish you wellness and happiness always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.